The Capitol Grand Hall was supposed to host another routine summit, an echo chamber of applause, polished smiles, and perfectly manicured talking points. Crystal chandeliers sparkled over the heads of the nation's most powerful conservative voices. Cameras were fixed, reporters prepped, and the stage had just emptied after a rousing appearance from former President Donald J. Trump. But what followed would fracture the evening, and perhaps the party itself. Denzel Washington, Academy Award-winning actor and longtime advocate for personal responsibility and integrity, had been invited to speak. He was meant to deliver a few inspiring words on leadership. But before he could reach the podium, former congressional candidate Karoline Leavitt seized the mic, uninvited, unfiltered. "Let's stop pretending," she said, voice sharpened with disdain. "Denzel Washington isn't here because he's a leader. He's here because Hollywood sent him to play one." The hall froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence, phones raised in unison. Denzel paused one step from the stage, his face unreadable. Karoline smirked, mistaking the silence for conquest. "You're just another actor reading lines, Denzel," she continued. "Quoting speeches someone else wrote. You're not a leader. You're a performer, hoping America doesn't see through the act." Denzel stepped forward. He didn't shout. He didn't gesture. He simply stared into her eyes and said in a low, clear voice, "If using my voice to stand up for truth makes me an actor, what does that make you? A critic with no script or just an extra in someone else's play?" A gasp swept across the room. Glass shattered at the back. Karoline flinched, but Denzel wasn't done. "I didn't stand on stages for applause, Karoline," he said. "I stood in front of broken communities without cameras, when it was easier to stay quiet. You found your courage when it was convenient to be loud." Yeah, the bonnet words struck like thunder on granite. He pressed on. "You called me a performer. But the real performance is pretending to stand for the people while standing only where the spotlight feels safe. I don't act out of fear. I act out of conviction. And unlike you, I've never sold my voice for applause." Karoline's posture shifted, her smirk now a grimace. "You want to talk about leadership?" Denzel asked, advancing. "Where were you when Twain lost its factories? When lies burned our neighborhoods? You hid behind tweets. Real Americans were bleeding. You disappeared." The live stream count exploded. Viewers watched in real time as Karoline cracked. "You don't understand what it takes to lead," she stammered. "No," Denzel interrupted. "You don't understand what it means to stand." The crowd erupted with whispers. He stepped forward again. "Leadership isn't bowing for applause. It's doing the right thing when no one's clapping. When it costs you." Karoline opened her mouth, but no words came. Denzel didn't gloat. He leveled his tone. "You called me a puppet, but you're the one dancing for approval, Karoline. You're not leading a movement. You're reading a script written by people who will never respect you." Silence. The room stiffened as Karoline visibly shrank. "You think you know what it's like to sit where I sat?" she finally snapped. "You weren't there. The pressure, the stakes. You don't know." Denzel didn't flinch. "And I stood firm. While you folded," she pointed a trembling finger at him. "You're a rookie. You were memorizing lines while I was building legacy." Denzel stared through her. "Calm, sharp. The difference is," he said, "I never spat on the man who gave me the shoes." The hall murmured. Some audience members nodded. Karoline stepped back instinctively. "You handed the pen to the media," Denzel continued. "You let them write your ending. When it mattered most, you let fear lead." A veteran in the third. Rouse stood and clapped slowly. Then another. Then the whole room. Denzel pulled a thin folder from his jacket. "This is a copy of communications between Karoline's team and Democrat-aligned outlets. Weeks after January 6th, while the public saw loyalty, she was negotiating panel appearances and branding deals." Gasps. Reporters scrambled. "That's classified," Karoline blurted. "Not anymore," Denzel said coldly. "A redacted version, cleared for public release last night." He laid the folder on the podium. Transparency isn't betrayal. Smiling while you lie? That is. The audience was thunderstruck. Even backstage, Trump turned to an aide. He just ended her career. Karoline froze. Denzel wasn't finished. You betrayed every American who believed you would fight when it mattered. This movement isn't perfect, but we need fighters, not pretenders. A young woman cried in the third row. Trump entered silently from the back, his face like stone. He walked slowly down the center aisle, stood beside Denzel at the podium. I've never been prouder of a man standing on this stage than I am right now, Trump said. Loyalty isn't blind obedience, it's standing for what's right. He turned to Karoline. I trusted you. You broke that trust, not just mine, America's. And then the kill shot. You called Denzel a puppet. But today, without even touching you, he pulled your strings. The crowd roared. Karoline stood motionless, eclipsed by the moment she triggered. Denzel returned to the podium. We can't heal by shielding those who helped break us. When the Capitol was under siege by lies, you chose silence. When Americans needed backbone, you offered press releases. He locked eyes with a young man holding a military photo. Your brother served while she made brand deals. That's why. I speak now. Thunderous applause shook the hall. Karoline backed away, trembling. Trump didn't speak again. He simply nodded to Denzel, a gesture of finality. A reporter called out, Should Karoline Leavitt be removed from the party? Denzel looked up. I believe accountability is long overdue. Not from the left, from within. The room held its breath. We don't lose elections because of our enemies' lies, Denzel continued. We lose because of quiet betrayals disguised as unity. Karoline had retreated into shadow. A shell of the firebrand she portrayed, Denzel's. Name was trending across platforms. Twitter flooded. Live streams broke viewership records. Backstage, an aide handed Denzel a folded note. From your father, they whispered. He stepped aside. Opened it. Son, I watched you today. I've never cried so hard in my life. Not because you were strong, but because you were kind, even when it hurt. You became the man I always hoped you'd be. Denzel wiped his eyes, folded the letter, slipped it into his pocket. Because behind every voice is a son. Behind every stand, a reason to believe again. This wasn't just a takedown, it was a reckoning, and America had witnessed it all. It wasn't just about politics anymore, it was about the soul of a country on the edge, and whether anyone still had the courage to carry it back. When the broadcast cut to commercial, Denzel stepped into a side corridor, alone. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Washington? A woman said, her voice shaking with grief. You don't know me. I lost my husband last year. He was a firefighter. He voted for Karoline twice. Denzel leaned against the wall, heart sinking. I'm so sorry. No, she replied, steadying herself. Today you gave people like us a voice again. My husband used to say, real leaders don't ask you to walk through fire. They carry you through it. Today, you carried us. He closed his eyes. Her words struck deeper than anything said on stage. Please, she whispered. Don't stop. Denzel didn't hesitate. I promise. As the call ended, he stood still, alone, but stronger. This wasn't about ego anymore. This was about fixing something long broken. The room buzzed again, lights back on. But something had changed. Karoline Leavitt stood and walked out. No one clapped. No allies followed. She passed row after row of averted eyes. No one called her name. Only silence. And silence judged harder than words ever could. Back near the stage, Denzel stayed composed. He didn't celebrate. He bowed his head. A boy tugged his father's sleeve. Why is she leaving? Because she forgot who she was, the father replied. And Mr. Washington reminded her. Karoline pushed open the doors and disappeared into the night, not as a leader, but a relic of what people had finally rejected. After the final speech, Denzel didn't race out. He listened. He shook hands, not out of obligation, but out of respect. An elderly veteran stood waiting, his jacket adorned with medals. "You spoke for us today," the man said. "I waited years to hear that." "Thank you for your service, sir," Denzel said. "No, thank you for finally serving us." As he walked away, Denzel watched each painful limp. These weren't just citizens, they were survivors of wars, of betrayals, of lies. A woman cradled her toddler and whispered, "That's our vice president." For the first time that night, Denzel allowed himself a small smile. Not of pride, but of purpose. Backstage, the applause still faint. He sat alone, quiet, contemplative. President Trump entered silently, handing him a glass of water. They sat side by side. No words at first, just the weight of it all. "You didn't just defend me," Trump finally said. "You defended them," Denzel nodded. "I just told the truth. Truth always costs something," Trump muttered. "You paid it tonight." "It was worth it." Trump grew quiet, then leaned in. "They love you now. Don't let it change you. Stay the man who tears up over strangers, not the man who runs toward cameras." Denzel looked over steady. "I'm not here for power. I'm here so no kid ever grows up feeling invisible." Trump stood. "That's why you'll outlast them all." That night, the city slept. But not Denzel. In the back of his SUV, he reread a letter from his father, grounding himself in the lines. His chief of staff asked, "Want to go over headlines?" "Not tonight." Outside, the Lincoln Memorial passed. Denzel stared at it, feeling the gravity not as pressure but as calling. He pulled out a sticky note. 4 words. "Tell the truth always." His mother's words. By midnight, his inbox had exploded. Messages from veterans, nurses, pastors, coal miners. One stood out, a teen in Kansas. "Mr. Washington, I've never cared about politics, but my dad lost his job last year. We felt invisible. Tonight, you made us feel like we matter again. Please don't stop." Denzel read it aloud. His staff sat silent, some wiping tears. "This isn't about elections anymore," he said. "It's about healing something inside our people." At 1:34 a.m., he entered the chapel at the vice president's residence. Alone. He lit a candle, folded his hands. "God, please keep me honest. And if I ever forget why I started, take it from me." Minutes passed. Then the door creaked. Trump, in slippers and a coat, entered. "Knew I'd find you here." Couldn't sleep. They sat in silence. Before Trump asked, "You think they're ready?" "No, I think they're desperate." "Then let's give it to them." The next morning, Denzel sat with Karen Dillard on the most watched news show in the country. "Mr. Vice President," she began, "what went through your mind when Karoline Leavitt called you a puppet?" Denzel leaned back. "Honestly, I was sad." "Sad? Because I saw someone who traded truth for applause. And the line you delivered that silenced her?" He paused. "Then, you call me a puppet for standing with a man who kept his promises, yet you sold your soul for a handshake from people who spit on your values." Social media erupted. Denzel truth. Leavitt exposed. Karen looked stunned. "You may have just shifted the direction of the party." "Not shifted," reminded. At home, his son asked, "Daddy, why did that lady say you were bad?" Denzel paused, then sat beside him. "Because when you stand for what's right, those who've done wrong try to make you look weak. But you didn't yell. Real strength doesn't scream. It speaks the truth, even when your voice shakes. You're my hero." "No, son, you are." Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt sat alone in a hotel room. Her phone buzzed, another canceled appearance. She turned on the TV. Denzel's words replayed. She turned it off. She looked at an old campaign photo. Young, hopeful, next to Trump. Now her reflection was hollow. She dialed an advisor. "They're done with you," the voice said. She didn't respond. She couldn't. In an Ohio classroom, 7th graders finished watching Denzel's speech. "How did that make you feel?" the teacher asked. A shy girl raised her hand. "Like someone finally cares about people like us." Another student added, "He wasn't trying to sound smart. He just told the truth." The teacher nodded. That's what leadership is, standing, even when others fold. On the TV, Denzel's voice echoed, "Cowards run from fire. Leaders walk through it." A boy whispered, "I wish my uncle could have heard that," before he gave up. Back in D.C., his aide Lauren knocked. "Come in," Denzel said. She sat down, emotional. "I used to believe in Karoline, defended her, even after." She turned on Trump. "But yesterday you reminded me why I started in this. Not for status, for people." Denzel nodded. "What matters is we don't stay where we were. You didn't just expose her. You healed something in us. Then it was worth it." Later that night, Trump called Denzel to the Oval Office. "You were incredible." Trump turned, his eyes wet. The man known for fire, undone by truth. "You reminded me it's not about us, it's about them. They need someone real, someone who won't leave when it gets hard. And they found him yesterday. They embraced. 2 men, bound by truth." The next morning, an envelope appeared on Denzel's desk. No address, just Mason H., age 11, Nebraska. "Dear Mr. Washington, my dad believed in Karoline. We had her sign in our yard. After she turned on Trump, he lost hope. But when you spoke yesterday, he cried. You reminded him who we are. Thank you for not being afraid. You're not a puppet. You're a warrior. Love, Mason." Denzel held the letter to his chest. This is why he fought. Karoline vanished from public view. No press, no allies. In a New Hampshire diner, she sat alone. People avoided her. The applause she once lived for, now a ghost. Denzel hadn't destroyed her with rage. He did it with truth. Back in D.C., Trump gave a national address. Denzel stood beside him. Trump stepped aside. "I don't need a teleprompter," Denzel began. "America doesn't need more scripts. We need truth. If standing by a man who put America first makes me a puppet, then so be it. I'd rather be a puppet of truth than a master of betrayal." The nation erupted. The people's fire had been reignited, and his name was Denzel Washington.